In the Weekdays with Bernie segment tonight, lots going on, including a big loss for Dan Rather. So let's bring in Fox News analyst Bernie Goldberg, who is in North Carolina today. I'm going to ask you the question they asked Lanny and Leslie, and I don't really think they answered very well. My opinion. Never in the history of broadcasting in this country has one network, Fox News Channel, been attacked so unrelentingly, okay, as this one has. Why?
Three reasons, I think. The first one is Fox is more conservative than any other major news organization. But the second reason, that would only come into play because of the second reason. You're successful. If you weren't successful, number one, wouldn't matter. And number three is Fox is provocative. And the combination of conservative, successful, and provocative creates an explosive mix where they come after you. We could talk about whether it's legitimate or not, because by and large, I think it's not legitimate. I think by and large, they're throwing spitballs at a battleship. I think a lot of it is simply because, as I say, you're conservative and successful. I'll give you a couple of examples. You go out and do a story about judges who are soft on child molesters. And who does the media get angry at? The judges? No, they get angry at you.
Right.
That's a little crazy.
And we have one tomorrow, by the way, a new one tomorrow. Go ahead.
Right. There are other examples like that where Fox uncovers stories that the so-called mainstream media should be uncovering. So what does the so-called mainstream media do? They get angry at Fox. This is wrong. This is the spitballs at the battleship argument. But sometimes, Bill, and whether you acknowledge it or not, I'm going to state it. Sometimes Fox brings on the criticism itself. There are some programs on Fox that are not only not fair and balanced, they're commentary shows, they don't have to be, but they brag about how fair and balanced they are. They don't cover rallies and tea parties. They cheerlead for rallies and tea parties. And as a journalist, I am totally against that.
All right.
And to that extent, the criticism is legitimate.
The problem there, though,
by and large, it's not.
That all editorial pages cheerlead for their crew. So if you read any newspaper, the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, any newspaper in the country, they'll be cheerleading for global warming.
Right.
And they'll be saying, hey, get out on Earth Day,
right.
Do this, do that. Okay, and I don't have any problem with that. Wait, Bernie, wait. I don't have any problem with get out on Earth Day and be environmentally correct. No problem. They all do it. But if you then take a commentary program, clearly labeled as such, and then they say, hey, you Tea Party people, go on out there and show them that you don't like this big government intrusion. What's the difference between Earth Day and Tea Party? What's the difference?
Well, the difference, I don't want to get too inside baseball.
That's a good question, Bernie. What's the difference?
Here's a good answer. Don't pretend that you're being objective. Don't go on the air, and I don't mean you, I mean others on this network. Don't go on the air and say these tea parties are a cross-section of America. They are not a cross-section. Don't pretend to be a journalist if you're not a journalist. If you want to be a commentator and comment,
I disagree.
be my guest.
I think that we clearly label
here.
I think we clearly label it the Fox News Channel. It's a good discussion. Glenn Beck comes on, and Glenn Beck is now in the target. He's the big target. He's coming up later on in the program. So let's get Glenn Beck. Well, what does Glenn Beck do? Glenn Beck comes on, and he basically says, look, I'm every man. I'm not a journalist. He says he's not a journalist. I'm every man, and I'm worried about the country. And this is why I'm worried. And he has the blackboard, and he has this, and this is who I like, Tea Party guys, and this is who I don't like, whoever Beck doesn't like that day.
Right.
I don't see any subterfuge there at all. Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity comes on right after the fact, and Sean Hannity says, look, I'm a Reagan Republican. That's who I am, Sean Hannity. He's not trying to fool anybody. He's not trying to say anything like that. He says, I'm a Reagan Republican. So this is how I see the world. I mean, come on, Bernie. These are legitimate stances. Every man, Reagan Republican. What's the beef?
The commentary part of it is totally legitimate, but to give false information just because you're a commentator is unacceptable.
If it's false information, I agree. But I haven't seen a lot of that.
Are you telling me, wait a second, are you telling me that you think those people at the Tea Parties were a cross-section of America? There were as many liberal Democrats as conservatives. There were as many people
I
who voted for Obama.
didn't hear anybody say there were as many liberal Democrats.
I did. You want a few names?
No,
you want a few names?
Because then I have to go back and research it. But I said there weren't very many black people there.
If I would go on your air and tell you a name, you can go to the bank on it. I'm not going to do it out of respect to you. But
that's
those
wrong,
people
and that's legitimate criticism.
They pretend to be journalists at the same time that they're saying, I'm not a journalist. Well, if you're not a journalist, don't pretend to be one.
I don't know
just
how
give
you
us
can,
your,
Bernie,
just
I don't
give
know
us
how
your
you can
opinions.
pretend to be a journalist if you say you're not. I mean, how do you do that?
Well, I just told you. They go on the air after they give their opinions, which is fine with me. They then state as facts things that aren't facts at all.
Okay. Well, that's legitimate, and that should be criticized, but not personal attacks, not trying to tear somebody's throat out, and that's what you get.
I totally agree.
All right.
I totally agree with that.
Let's go on to Dan Rather. A minute on Dan Rather here. Now, he loses today.
Right.
Hardly heard anything about it.
It'll be on page 849 tomorrow. Look, I worked with Dan Rather for 28 years, and for much of that time I worked directly with him. And he always used to say that CBS News was a family. I would laugh at that, but he really believed it. I'm guessing right about now he thinks it's the Manson family because CBS crushed him today. The lawsuit that Dan filed, the $70 million lawsuit, really, when you get through all the legalese, was about one thing. It was about saying CBS News took me off the air, CBS News warehoused me at 60 Minutes, and then CBS threw me out because I went after George Bush, and that was bad for business. He desperately needed to prove that was not the case, to prove that he was an honest journalist. And now he doesn't have the opportunity, unless there's an appeal that he wins, he doesn't have the opportunity to prove that he was an honest journalist, that he wasn't partisan.
It's very tough to do that. Okay,
Right.
Bernie, thanks very much.